Okay, introductions. First of all, welcome. Thank you very much for coming out here, for taking the effort to drive from some of the distances that you came. You are now at the first ever military scouting experience in the western United States. There's only one other such type of activity, and that's in Wisconsin. We are the second such activity that occurs. So, I am Chief Juan Gonzalez, Chief Warrant Officer 2. We are part of Post 558 Infantry Explorers, and we are hosting this event. This came out of an idea that was presented to our base commander, which was a group of scouts that wanted to get some military familiarization, some basic training, if you will, for a weekend. Present it to the scouts to help them either learn some skills they don't already know, to familiarize themselves with some of the military terminology, and in some cases to actually help you with some skills later on in life into a military career. So we have a crew of about 3 different organizations that are putting this function together. If you want to include the California National Guard, there's 4. Okay, so Post 558 Infantry Explorers is 1. Second is California State Guard, which is a support element of the California National Guard. They're part of the California Department of the Military. Third is the Civil Air Patrol. Now, some of you scouts may see youth in here wearing an Air Force type uniform. They are members of the Civil Air Patrol. They are also partaking. Not only are they helping, but they are also participating in the MSE. Now, what I'd like to do is introduce some of the staff that is helping to make this event possible. Let me have Chief Sir raise his hand. He is one of our senior advisors at Post 558 Infantry Explorers. In the back, I have Warrant Officer Van Wyn, who helped you in the end processing. Some of our cadets are on the very right flank here. And as well, Captain Brian Cole with the Civil Air Patrol. Also, Specialist Quintanilla in the very back. She is with the California State Guard. She's our medical specialist. One more gentleman in the Civil Air Patrol in the back. We are all coming together to help make this event possible. And what we are doing is trying to bring as many different elements of a military experience all coming together to help you guys learn to what it's like, to get a taste of what it's like to be in the military. Whoop. 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 Let me give you that one more time, motivationally. Whoop. Whoop. So, what I'd like to do, go over some basic ground rules. Number 1, safety is extremely important. In an element such as this, you can have all kinds of things go wrong very quickly. So number 1, hydration is extremely important, okay? It is very essential that scouts make sure that you keep a bottle of water with you at all times. How many scouts here did not bring a water container? Great. How many scouts brought a water container? That's what I was hoping for. So make sure you keep that container with you at all times. If you need to top it off with some water, there are various locations. You can either go to one of the sinks outside here. There is what's called a water buffalo. How many people here do not know what a water buffalo is? Okay, water buffalo is a military term for a portable water tank. Okay? When we go out to the encampment area, you will see a water tank on wheels. That is a water buffalo. You can use that to fill up your water bottle. If you need somebody to teach you how to use it, we'll go over that later on. Number 2, how many scouts here have any kind of a medical condition that may prevent them from exerting any physical activities? Okay, so that means that all scouts here are able to exert themselves physically in an outdoor environment. Whoop. Whoop. Okay. We do have a situation, something that I was just presented with today. Something that you will understand being in the military is that there are all kinds of surprises that may happen that you don't expect. And you have to what's called adapt, improvise, and move on. So, there is an underground beehive adjacent to the encampment area. That underground beehive is corded off in yellow tape with orange cones. Where is that beehive that I just explained to you? How is that marcated? How is that? What did I just say? Very good. So, what are you going to do if you see an area with yellow tape? Very good. So, how many scouts here have a propensity or have allergies of bee stings, for bee stings? Okay, so I'm not going to have any situations where I hear that some Boy Scout got stung by a bee and we have to do a medevac, correct? Whoop. Whoa. All right. So, at this point, any other kind of safety medical issues are you walk into a gopher hole, you twist your ankle, or you fall and you break an arm or something like that. We have medic staff here on hand to handle any kind of situation like that. Any other scouts take any medications, something they have to do on a regular basis? You don't have to raise your hand, just make sure that you let your squad leaders know that condition exists so that we can help to monitor that. Whoop. Whoop. Okay. We do have some areas that we need to make sure that we keep clean. We have a restroom, and this building here is called the TOC, which stands for Tactical Operations Center. Okay. So what is this building called? TOC. Okay. In the TOC, we have a latrine that's just on the other side of this building, facing eastbound. There's a women and a men's latrine there. In the military, we don't call them restrooms. We call them what? Latrines. Very good. So if you need to use a latrine, you can use that. In the extreme emergency, we have latrines in the gym area, and we'll show you where those latrines are at a later time. Okay? Anybody here needs to take a shower? There are showers in the gym latrine, not in this latrine. We want to keep the restrooms clean. Okay? Your efforts to help us keep it clean really matter to us. Because we as an organization request this building from the base, we have to return the building back into usable condition as we drew it. Now, there's going to be lots of situations where we're marching from here to there doing military type activities. Just a couple of things I want to make sure that you're aware of. When you're standing in a formation, standing at attention, do not lock your knees. Locking your knees causes a circulation problem in your legs, and you could eventually pass out by keeping your knees locked. So you want to keep your knees slightly bent, just relaxed. Of course, standing at attention, but don't lock your knees. Whoop. Whoa. Now, we do have a warm weekend, okay? So we want to make sure that, being as that we're going to spend quite a bit of time in the sun, make sure you put your sunscreen on. Anybody here did not bring sunscreen? Good, everybody brought their sunscreen. We don't want to have any situations where the sun could actually cause an injury when you're out there. Okay? So I recommend you put out sunscreen first thing in the morning. If you find that the sunscreen has come off, put some more on, that's fine. We'll expect that you'll be taking care of that yourself. Now, this being the first type of event that we're doing, there is a very, very high possibility that we'll get some media attention. So consider yourselves fortunate that you'll be part of the first ever type function of its kind in the Western United States. The military is watching what we're doing here. So for two things, if a member of the media comes up to you and starts asking questions, we obviously want you to answer honestly. But what I would recommend that you do is that you refer anybody from the media to one of the staff members of the event. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. It makes it much easier when it comes to explaining the what they call in the military the 5 W's, the who, what, why, when, and where. Okay. It really helps. Okay. A lot of times, people that are participating in a function of this nature don't know all the details, or they don't necessarily know how to answer the question in such a way that a reader or a viewer watching the material may not make sense to them. Okay? So, again, if somebody from the media comes up to you and asks you a bunch of questions, if they ask you personal questions, you don't have to answer personal questions. You don't have to tell them your social security number or anything like that. Okay, you can tell them your first name. You can tell them the city where you came from. You can tell them your troop number. Things of that nature, but don't get personal. Whoop. Whoop. At this point, I'd like to introduce a speaker, an advisor for Post 558, who has a very good point of view that he can share with you guys as scouts. Okay, he's somebody that came along to the post, has helped out Post 558, act as an advisor, being a mentor, helping us in a capacity where we have a very experienced military soldier that helps us out. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Colonel William Wenger.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Gonzalez asked me to speak tonight to you, to relate to you my scouting background, how my scouting background helped me in my military career, and also it helped me in my civilian career. First of all, I'd like to learn a little bit about you, and I want to caution you that I will do my best to do my duty as a speaker, to follow the 3 cardinal rules of public speaking. Do you know what they are? Be on time, be brief, be seated. First of all, I'd like to know something about you. Tell me where you were all from. Tell me which councils and troops are represented here. Speak up, please. San Gabriel? Where else?
Western Los Angeles,
Good. Where else?
Riverside,
Wow. Long way.
Long Beach,
Long Beach, that's my council, along with Orange County now. Where else?
Whittier,
Whittier? Where else? The Civil Air Patrol, you're all based here at Joint Forces Training Base?
Yes, sir.
By the way, I used to command this base, among others. So, I don't know whether you realize it, but what you were doing this weekend with the able help of Post 558 is you're actually returning to the roots of Boy Scouting. How many of you know who Baden Powell is? You should. Good. And do you know that Baden Powell was a lieutenant general in the British Army? And that he fought in the Boer War? He's very highly decorated. And his purpose in founding the Boy Scout Association in Great Britain was to provide youth with experience in the woods, to provide discipline, to provide ethics, and to provide discipline of a military manner. That's why you're wearing a uniform. That's why, if you look at the old pictures of scouts both in Britain and the United States, they're wearing essentially the World War I uniform of those countries. And traditionally, that uniform has evolved from the military uniforms, and there are still many elements of the military in scouting. Your uniform, as I said, the scout salute, the oath of allegiance, the patriotism that's imbued in the scout oath and law. And so you're returning to your military roots with the able help of Post 558. Let me tell you, you will see, if you have not already, that they put an extraordinary amount of time and effort into providing you the very best experience possible this weekend. There's one other aspect of the military. While you don't have NCOs in this case yelling at you, what I would ask you to do, if you're asked a question or if you're asked for a response, sound off. Speak loudly and forcefully. You need to learn to do that, and you should be respectful of someone who asks you a question and address them properly and in a firm manner. Now let me tell you just a little bit more about the interrelationship of Lord Baden-Powell, the military aspects of scouting, and what you're going to experience today, and what I'm going to tell you about how scouting assisted me in my life experience and my career. One of the famous quotes of Lord Baden-Powell was that a scout is never taken by surprise. He knows exactly what to do when anything unexpected happens. And how do you learn to react properly to such things as the chief explained to you, the beehive situation in your bivouac area? Many of you have the first aid merit badge, don't you? Many of you know how to avoid hazards and safety, correct? It's a safety merit badge. You know to be cautious and to help other people at all times, your fellow scouts, the instructors, any of the VIPs. If the VIPs come into your bivouac area, which I know you'll keep neat and clean, that you would want to tell them, don't go near that area that's marked off by the yellow tape. And you would obey what Chief Gonzalez has told you about staying away from those bees. And that is a positive reaction to a negative situation that you just found out about. Deal with the unexpected, as Lord Baden-Powell explained you were trained to do. So what gives you that training is the scouting experience. Now let me tell you a little bit about my scouting experience. I've been involved in scouting for more than 60 years. I started in scouting in 1957 and I'm still active. Last night I went to see 76 Eagles for the year 2019 in the Long Beach Area Council honored, along with a whole number of volunteers, to include 3 Silver Beaver recipients from the National Council. So I've been a scout since 1957. I was chief of the tribe of Tahquitz in Long Beach in 1963 and 64. For those of you who are not familiar with the tribe of Tahquitz, it's an honor camping organization, very similar to the Order of the Arrow. For many years, Long Beach Council was one of the very few councils that did not have Order of the Arrow. Over the last 10 or 12 years, they have had Order of the Arrow, and it's a good lodge, in addition to the tribe still providing service to the council and the camp staff. So as chief of the tribe of Tahquitz, at the age of 17, I was responsible for a camp staff of over 50. What they did, how they were disciplined, and what they did to aid the scouts in the 60s. I received my Eagle Scout card in 1963, and I've carried it all my life with pride. It was carried in 4 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it is signed by John F. Kennedy. And I'm very proud of it, as I said. I was an Explorer Post advisor, Tribe Post in the 80s. I've been involved in international scouting in Germany, Iraq, where we developed a camp in Baghdad. And in Afghanistan, my second tour, I established a group called Scouters for Afghan Scouting. We started with 3 charter members, and 11 months later, we had 360 members scattered around Afghanistan, all dedicated to restoring a 70-year-old tradition of scouting for boys and girls, surprisingly enough, in a Muslim country, providing them with resources, mostly from the United States, helping them rewrite their manuals, and reorganize scouting nationwide in Afghanistan. We had about 3,000 scouts in Afghanistan. But scouting in Afghanistan had been devastated by the Soviet occupation and then by the Taliban, literally ruining most of the country. So I was pleased to assist with that effort. I serve every summer at Camp Tockwitz. The Long Beach Council Scouts know about Camp Tockwitz, and hopefully camp there. And you all are welcome to camp there any summer you wish. But I serve as a camp commissioner at the camp. I've also helped the interrelationship of the military and scouting for the Long Beach Area Council by securing items from Dermo, the surplus for the military, for the council. And I'm pleased to be serving with the really amazing scouts in Post 558 and their leader, Chief Gonzalez. How did scouting help me with my military career? Well, I began in my military career as an ROTC cadet in 1965. I served 42 years of commissioned service. My last active duty tour was in Afghanistan. I finished that tour in 2012. So I spent a considerable amount of time in the military, and I was able to do that in large part because of scouting experience. I served as an Airborne Ranger infantry officer my entire military career, and I've always believed that I would never have gotten through Ranger School had it not been what I had learned in scouting and the rigors that the tribe of Tockwitz put me through when I became a member. And of all the skills that I had learned both from scouting and serving on the camp staff and then advising thereafter the tribe of Tockwitz. I've served in Germany, Turkey, Japan, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and also in Jordan, where I was in charge of the border police in Iraq, my first tour. I was chief of policy, which is the interrelationship of U.S. Embassy and the MNFI, Major Four-Star Command in Iraq. So in that capacity, I traveled to Jordan to educate my border police for Iraq. I served 4 years as battalion commander for the California Army National Guard. And during that time, my first drill with my battalion was the LA riots, believe it or not. I had just taken over the command of the battalion, and we deployed on the streets of Los Angeles, fully armed with automatic weapons, loaded automatic weapons. And a couple of years later, we also deployed, we were the first out on the Northridge earthquake mobilization, also again with fully loaded automatic weapons. And the troops were so disciplined in both occasions that, at least in my battalion, there was no discharge of weapons, even accidentally. The only discharge of any weapon during the entire LA riots, which you may know something about, was by a signal battalion who were nearly run over by a drug dealer one night, and the drug dealer came around and tried to run over 3 guardsmen. They fended him off and got out of the way of his vehicle where he was trying to kill him, frankly. He came back around the street, he tried it again, they still didn't shoot at him. The third time he came around, they fired 3 rounds, 2 into his torso and 1 into his head. And the word on the streets after that was, don't mess with the Ninja Turtles, as they call it, the Guard, because they will kill you.
Did they really use that word, Colonel?
What's that?
Did they really say mess, or did they say something else?
Mess. There were no other attempts to kill guardsmen, believe me. And within 72 hours, the violence on the streets had totally gone away. And I had people come to me from South Central and say, please don't leave. This is the safest we've been in years. And I said to the lady who told me that, we would stay as long as we're welcome and as long as we have orders to do so. and I feel your pain. After retirement in 2000, because at some point you mandatorily have to retire from the military. When 9/11 occurred, I figured that after 33 years of serving in uniform, being trained, that I needed to go serve. That too is a scout trait, is it not?
Yes.
So I volunteered for a tour in Iraq. And by good fortune or bad, I ended up serving for General David Petraeus as the chief of border security for Iraq. So every time David Petraeus got called back by the president to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, I got a call. And so I went back each time, and I willingly so, I wanted to serve. So I served 4 combat tours voluntarily after retirement. So I've literally retired 5 times from the military. In my Iraq tours and Afghanistan tours, because I had a police background as a special reserve police officer for LAPD and had done some teaching for LAPD leadership and field training officers, I was assigned to be an advisor for the police in both countries. At one point, I was responsible for about 160 contractors and service members from all over the world to train the police of Iraq. And there were 560,000 police. So we were advising their leadership at the Ministry of Interior. And in Afghanistan, Afghanistan had 2 tours. I advised the police, but I was also responsible for the counter improvised explosive device and explosive ordnance disposal training for the regional command out of Kandahar, and then at the second tour for the entire nation of Afghanistan for both the police and the army. How did scouting help me with this? First of all, discipline. As I alluded, I don't think I could have made it through the rigors of Ranger School had not scouting provided me with skills and background and the discipline to know that I could push myself further and harder than I thought I could in order to survive and graduate from Ranger School. Just for an example, in Ranger School, we started with 363 soldiers, both enlisted and officers. We graduated 90. So the attrition rate is pretty high. And that's typical. It wasn't just my class. Perseverance is obviously something that scouting taught me, because I never could have made it. As you well know, there are some Eagles here. You could never make it through to Eagle or even Life Scout without perseverance and discipline. It takes a lot of work. There's only 2% of scouts who ever make Eagle. Accepting responsibility. You look at what happened tonight and how efficient this whole procedure was. And you all don't know, but I saw the traffic. There has been extensive email traffic, a lot of meetings, and an awful lot of work to get to this day to share this military perspective in relation to scouting for you in the tradition of Baden-Powell. It's an enormous amount of work to pull this off. And I think you'll see the fruits of the labor of Post 558 and their leadership, who I highly commend, as you experience the next 2 days. In scouting, you learn leadership. Patrol leader, senior patrol leader, a whole variety of responsibilities. That is the beginning, the acorn from which the tree of leadership for new life is grown. And you will be put in leadership positions this weekend. And I know that because of your scouting background and because of the assistance of your fellow scouts, you will be successful. Care of subordinates. You know, the Army has an old saying, mission first, soldiers a close second. Because if you don't take care of your subordinates, you'll never accomplish the mission. It's always said that the officers and the NCOs make the decisions to give the directives, but it's the privates that carry out a successful mission. Improve one of the things, particularly in the international scouting experience that I had, and also the World Jamborees, believe it or not, one of which I attended in Orange County at the Irvine Ranch in 1953, before I was even a Cub Scout. My parents took me out there. But what you learn from those experiences afforded by scouting is to understand, to relate to be able to work with scouts from all sorts of countries, cultures, backgrounds. Even if you never go to an international event, there is a wide variety of scouts in scouting, and you learn to work well together. Otherwise, you would not be successful at scout camp, and you would not be successful in advancing in rank. Better skills and training as you work through the advancements, you work through the merit badges. Again, they're very closely related skills gleaned from the military that scouting teaches. First aid, pioneering, rifle marksmanship, shotgun, archery, even to the skills in pioneering of knot tying. For the remarks tonight, I talked to two senior officers who were also Eagle Scouts, one of whom I served 3 combat tours with in Iraq and Afghanistan. The other was a Vietnam veteran, and he told me a story when we visited his ship, the Midway in San Diego, that the ship was in dire trouble and going to be in a situation which would have caused a collision with another ship. And he happened to be the officer on the watch, and someone told him, one of the chiefs said, someone grab that hawser and secure it. In other words, get it tied to the ship. He threw a bowline with that hawser and tied it off, and the chief, after the crisis was over and the danger was past, the chief came to him and he says, how in hell did you learn to tie a bowline in that hawser that quickly? He says, scouts. So he saved an entire aircraft carrier because of his scout experience, and there are many tales like that. Scouting also teaches the necessity of continuing education. And that means not just education in scouting, but the value of education to follow up your high school education, to go to college, to get perhaps an advanced degree, and how that will apply to building your entire experience that will help you succeed in life. You have an enormous opportunity here afforded to you by Post 558. And I hope that you will exercise every bit of energy and concentration and cooperation with each other and the staff to learn as much as you possibly can. And I hope you will leave this experience with wonderful memories and great knowledge. So I salute you for being scouts. I salute you for being here for this experience, and I wish you the best of luck. Stay away from the bees. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Colonel. So, are we ready? So, when an officer or a warrant officer, as in my case, addresses you, you respond by saying, sir. If an NCO addresses you, you respond by saying, Sergeant, Corporal, Specialist, as their rank implies. Am I clear?
Sir.
Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Understood. Okay. So, one thing that I wanted to touch that I kind of glossed over. How many people here have heard of police explorers, fire explorers? Okay, we are explorers, military explorers. So we are actually part of the Boy Scouts system. What we do is we help scouts or youth, 13, 14, 15 years old, all the way up until 18, 19, 20 years old. Help them develop a career or develop their citizenship. So what we do is we interact with military units. We teach our youth some military skills, and in many cases, the cadets that go through our program, if they don't go off into a civilian professional life, they'll actually go into the military. And we afford them the opportunity where they can learn basic skills on our time so that when they start the military, they're already at a second or third step advantage. Whoop.
Whoop.
So if this is something that you want to consider doing, we're open to it. But I wanted to make sure you understood who we were and why we exist. It's the reason why the base commander here, we've been operating here for 30 years, bringing youth through our system. My daughter is one such person. She is now, this summer, going to be graduating from West Point. She's going to become an officer, an artillery officer. And she credits a lot of what she learned in Post 558, having helped teach her the discipline, the character of what is required in order to become an officer, or just join the military in general, okay? So, what we're going to do at this time is we're gonna have our NCO, cadet NCOs come up. We're going to break you up into squads. But at this time, I welcome you into this program. You are to speak up when you are spoken to. You are not to stay timid. We want you to be energetic, motivated. We want you to be here, okay? So don't hide in the shadows. Volunteer. If you are asked a question, we want you to take advantage of the situation. On Sunday, when we finish the program, you will be receiving a certificate of completion that you went through this program. We encourage you to consider talking to your fellow scouts and other friends that may be interested in attending this function next year. We hope to be running this program annually from here on. So the idea being is that you learn some military skills that you can take back with you to your troops or to your life. And it's something that you actually want to share with your other friends and may even want to come back again next year and maybe the year after. Cool?
Whoa.